Hello there and welcome to Toya's wonderful world of weird, where anything can happen in a world where reality constantly shifts, where things that we think are normal turn out to be exactly the opposite. If you are looking for words to put you to bed or words to fill you with fun in the morning, this is not the story for you. But if you are looking for something that gives you the chills in your everyday life, then this is a story for you. This is The Breath Catcher. Colin never looked forward to the tube journey across town, to the tired offices he worked at in Finchley. He dreamt that one day he would own his own business in an industrial unit somewhere in Surrey, where the commute would take less than 15 minutes and the drive home would take him past his favourite pub. In his mind's eye, his home would be surrounded by dense woodland and he would drive a Land Rover. And at weekends he'd go clubbing in Brighton, even though now he was approaching 50, he may have to dye his hair in order to continue doing that. 6:30 a.m. he stepped on the tube at Elephant and Castle, where the rush hour was well underway, and he wasn't looking forward to the hike across town. When you are packed like sardines, it's hard to like anyone around you. Yet when you're in a rammed nightclub, you love every single reveller, their sweat, their breath, their touch. You like being a sardine on a Saturday night. On the tube, reality is everyone just wants to arrive at their destination and be free of the claustrophobia that makes them all feel completely mad. On the hour-long journey, Colin spends a lot of time looking at his feet, his hands on the rail, his reflection, the brick walls of the underground pulsing by. He looks anywhere, trying not to notice the life around him or any individual around him. Every morning, in his effort to be anonymous, Colin can't help finding himself staring at the same person. That person is a small grey-skinned man who is either near Colin or within sight on the next bobbing carriage. For some reason, this is the only person Colin ever seems to remember. This man, in Colin's opinion, is a little repugnant but harmless. This man has a strange, repetitive twitch. Colin assumes it's the man's coping mechanism. The man spots someone on the carriage, pushes through the commuters, stands behind that person, then takes a small glass sample bottle from his pocket, unscrews the top and holds it up near the unsuspecting person's head and holds still. Then puts the screw top back on the bottle and puts it in his pocket. No one takes offence. The man looks as though he is testing for air pollution. The next morning, Colin, against his better judgment, found himself fixating on the man's actions. The man was in the next carriage and was pushing through the commuters towards an elderly woman. Colin became uncomfortable as he noticed the grey man was behind a small elderly woman with a child, maybe a grandmother taking her grandchild to an early dental appointment. The man's breathing was increasing and beads of sweat appeared on his top lip as he started the motion of taking the small glass bottle out of his pocket, unscrewing it while swaying to and fro with the train's movement. Then he didn't do what he usually does, which is just hold the open bottle near the back of the head. This time, he excitedly pushed the bottle in front of the boy's mouth, as if snatching the air around him, and then quickly screwed closed the bottle and pocketed it in his jacket. Colin was appalled. Then the man turned away from the boy and stared through the carriage glass directly at Colin and smiled. Goosebumps prickled Colin's arms and his legs weakened. He turned quickly, pretending he was idly daydreaming, but instead he felt sick. It was a beautiful, clear sky as Colin entered the tube the next day. It was Friday. Friday still felt like the beginning of the weekend to him, and he was looking forward to 2 days of freedom and frolicking on the Brighton scene. July meant Pride on the beach, and all his friends would be in town. As the packed train pulled away from the platform, Colin turned to hold a rail when he saw the grey man immediately facing him, holding the rail and staring intently. The man reached in his pocket, pulled out the small bottle, unscrewed the top and held it boldly to Colin's mouth and nose, knowing that Colin's breath had deepened with fear. Colin was paralyzed by the man's blatant action. The man screwed the top back on the bottle and smiled at Colin for an eternity. At the next station, the man stepped out of the carriage and rushed to another about 4 doors down, where he fixed his stare on an elderly man as he smiled. Once Colin got his breath under control, he was able to access how he felt. He felt violated as he kept a close eye on the grey man, repeating his actions to a select few who, and this is when Colin could have thrown up. The man was focusing on people who looked ill. When the tube reached Finchley Central, Colin decided to stay on and see where the grey man would get off. He didn't have to wait for long. The grey man exited the train at 2 stops further along, Woodside Park, a small, quiet station. Colin leapt from the train and confronted the man. "What the hell were you doing? Look, if you're collecting air samples, there's no need to come into someone's personal space. What were you doing, and what is it you are after?" The grey man was unfazed. He smiled and he calmly said, "I am the breath catcher. When one of you is about to die, you release 28 grams in weight from your lungs. It's your soul. This breath has great properties. It contains the first detachment of your newborn soul. The remaining detachment happens the moment you take your last breath. And that's when every human loses that 28 grams from their body weight. Let's say I take the first and purest part of that breath." The man was still smiling. Colin knew the man was completely mad, but he was compelled to stay in conversation and hold the man on the platform with his stare. "Are you saying," said Colin, "all those people you have approached are about to die?" "Yes," said the grey man. Colin was horrified. "The little boy?" "Yes," said the grey man. Colin wanted to collapse to his knees. He took a huge breath and gasped, "And me?" "Yes," said the grey man. Colin couldn't speak. His heart was exploding. He felt faint and nauseous. With one last ounce of strength, he hit out at the grey man and pushed him towards the train, leaving the platform, and the little grey man fell under the wheels. The next day, the newspapers had no news about Colin's death on that platform. But on the Elephant and Castle line to Woodside Park, The little grey man enjoyed reading the headlines on the newspapers of everyone having their Saturday off and heading for a park. The headline said, "Old man miraculously survives being pushed under a train." As he read the passenger's papers from the seat opposite, he reached into his pocket and produced a glass vial. Happy dreams, everybody, and sweet nightmares. Lots of love from Toya.